5793 locally or 1-800-356-5793. Our fax number is 336-5250.
Good morning, boys and girls. It is 32 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock. It's a Monday. Another week is starting for us here at KSHN.com and probably where you are too. Today's guest is Social Security's Andy Hardwick, who is, actually, this is not social distancing. This is just what Andy does. Andy's on by phone. Good morning, Andy Hardwick.
Good morning. Good morning.
How is it over in the Houston area today?
Beautiful. The weather is beautiful. It's gorgeous outside. It's perfect weather.
And we're all stuck inside.
That's right.
Boy, did we do this wrong. Okay, Andy, we talked a little bit just before we went on the air, and you said there's a deadline coming up. So let's hit that one first for those people that are out there in Never Never Land. You might want to listen to this, but before we go there, if you have questions for Andy Hardwick, you can call us at 936-336-5793. 936-336-5793 or 1-800-356-5793. Those are the two ways you can talk to Andy on the phone. In the meantime, please, Andy, go ahead.
Okay, most folks that have filed tax returns for 2018 or 2019, if they haven't gotten their check yet from IRS, they really don't have to do anything. It's automatic. However, if they have minor children under 17, and they have not filed a tax return for 2018 or 2019, and they want that extra $500 for those minor kids, and they're on SSI, the check that comes on the first of the month, they need to go on the IRS website, irs.gov, G-O-V, like in Victor, and they need to put in some information about their kids. Otherwise, they're not going to get that extra $500 per child. Now, if they did file a tax return for 2019 or 2018, they don't have to do anything. But if they did not, and they receive SSI, the check that comes on the first of the month and gives you Medicaid, then there's a deadline. If they have any minor kids in the house, they must contact IRS by Wednesday and file for those children. Otherwise, they won't get that extra $500 per minor child that they have in their household.
Now, let me add something to that. For those of you that don't want to think too hard, just go to KSHN.com. There's a big IRS link at the top, and it'll take you directly to the page.
Right.
So, okay, so now that deadline is close of business Wednesday or midnight Wednesday or thereabouts?
Close of business Wednesday.
Okay.
Well, I'd say probably midnight Wednesday, okay? I don't think there's a time. But anyway, it's got to be by Wednesday. So, all right. And as far as I know that Governor Abbott is going to make some declarations today about, gradually opening up the state. And I know people hear this on the news, so they wonder what's going on with Social Security. As of now, all Social Security offices nationwide are still closed. If you want to do business with Social Security, the best way, as always, is to come online at socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov, G-O-V. That's the best way. Now, if you don't have a laptop or computer in your home, then you can always call our 800 number. Now, the 800 number, the hours are limited. They're now from 8 to 5:30 during COVID-19. Normally, they're 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but the waiting time can be long, and that number is 1-800-772-1213, 1-800-772-1213, if they cannot get a hold of us online. Now, when I've been talking with Bill in the past, I've mentioned opening up a My Social Security account. If you go to socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov, you will see on the home page if you want to open up a My Social Security account. What that does is it lets you do a lot of things online by yourself that you used to need to go to the office for. So like if you need a an award letter, or you need a replacement Social Security card, or replacement Medicare card, or you need to change your address, or phone number, or banks where your bank account where your check goes, you can do all that through your My Social Security account. It takes about 10 minutes to set up, and, that gives you access to your record. If you're still working, unless you're 60 years old or older, you're not going to get that letter from Baltimore that we used to send out yearly that would tell you how many work credits you had. And that's very important because your future Social Security checks are going to be based on what's on that work record. So if there's an error there and you don't realize that, you could be underpaid. So if you have a My Social Security account, you can check your record at any time and make sure it's correct.
So they no longer send those letters. You have to go online and find that out.
Right, unless you're 60 or older. If you're 60 or older, then you will get that letter yearly. But if you're under 60, you won't. And you might think to yourself, well, why would a person under 60 even look at that? Well, as I said, you want to make sure that that all those earnings are there correctly because your future checks are going to be based on that. But not everybody who gets Social Security is older. Okay, we have millions of folks that are on the disability program because they have a physical or mental disability that doesn't permit them to work. So you want to make sure that anybody, even your kids, if they are working, you want to make sure that they open. Now they have to be at least 18 years old, but they want to make sure that they open an account to make sure that their earnings are there correctly. And why would that be a big concern to them? Because statistically, 1 in 4 young people will become disabled before they reach full retirement age. And I've experienced this in my own family. As Bill knows, my oldest son was diagnosed with cancer several years ago, and it was a pretty serious form of cancer. He received Social Security, and he actually went on Medicare also. He's now off, thank heaven, because he's recovered and he's working again. But I mean, it was there when he needed it. But imagine if while he had been working, maybe they had his Social Security number wrong, or maybe his name was misspelled, or for some reason the employer was not taking out Social Security. No matter how sick he was, he would not have been able to get his Social Security because he wouldn't have had enough work credits. So you want to make sure that you check that record at least once a year, everybody who's working, to make sure that you've got it shows your work credits and that your work, the amount you earn is shown correctly.
Now, if you have this My Social Security account online and you check it periodically, would that help in identifying maybe somebody messing with your identification?
Absolutely. If having 5 kids, I can always use this as an example. My third son, who works for Harris County as a deputy, he about 3 years ago, he got a letter from IRS telling him that he owed them money because he had underreported his wages. Well, when he looked at his work record, the wages were inflated. So it turned out that somebody was working with his Social Security number, and those wages were added on to his regular wages reported by Harris County. So IRS thought that he had not reported all his wages. So what happens in a case like that is we can check and see what employer is reporting those wages, and we will send somebody to interview that person, and then turn that over to Office of Inspector General for prosecution if it looks like somebody was assuming another person's identity and using their Social Security number.
Okay, now that's a good thing to keep on top of. Now, what if, is there anything else in identifying ID theft that could be helpful with this My Social Security account?
Well,
underreporting? Maybe it's not ID theft, but maybe your employer is not reporting the full amount.
Right. Let's say you look at your work record, and 2 years ago you made $20,000 and a zero shows up. Well, maybe your name was misspelled, your Social Security number was input correctly, or something happened. If that is the case, you come to the Social Security office whenever we open that back up again with either a W-2 or income tax papers or letter from your employer, and we will fix that for you. Okay? So we will either subtract the incorrect wages or add the correct wages that should be there. So that's why we tell people when they change their name, like if a woman is getting divorced or married, if she's going to be using her married name or going back to her maiden name, to please come to the Social Security office with a marriage, something that shows her old name and her new name, so we can correct those records. Because otherwise, if she starts using the new name at work and they start reporting it under the new name, the system is not going to recognize. They're going to say, well, this belongs to Miss Jones, who is now Miss White. We're going to say, we don't know a Miss White because this Social Security number belongs to Miss Jones. So if Miss White, formerly Miss Jones, comes into the office and tells us and shows us the proofs of the what happened for her to change the name, then we will correct that on the records, and we will show that Miss Jones is now Miss White, and she will get the proper credit for the work that she has done. We say the same thing for the folks that become citizens. You know, I don't know there in Liberty, but here in Houston, we have a lot of folks from all over the place. And, you know, once they become citizens, sometimes if you look at their green card, their residency card, their passport, sometimes they have a name which has like 30 syllables and pronounce it. So they can, what they do is sometimes when they become citizens, they simplify it or Americanize it, or something, which INS, or now Department of Homeland Security allows you to do. So if for some reason there's a name change, they need to let us know so we can cross-reference our records so that they will get proper credit.
Okay, well now that makes sense. Let's talk about scams. What's the most recent scam that people are trying to pull on folks?
Well, because of COVID and stuff, they're calling you up and telling you, well, you know, in order to get your check, in order to get your money, please give us, you know, your Social Security number, your identity information, because we have to check it against our records and make sure, and so we can, you know, arrest the scammer or whatever it is when they are the actual scammer. They also might tell you, there's a problem with your Social Security number. We're doing a check here. Could you verify some information for us? And they will, you know, they'll try and get you to get some personal information about yourself, especially your Social Security number, so they can go out and open credit cards and other things in your name. Now, if there's a credit problem with your credit card, we cannot correct that at Social Security. The only thing, the Federal Trade Commission can do that. But the only thing we can correct is your wages. If there's a problem with your wages, we can take care of that. But otherwise, they would have to contact the Federal Trade Commission, and then plus the credit card companies, so they don't get charged with those, you know, expenses that are not theirs in the first place.
Right,
so,
fraudulent, yeah.
So if you get a phone call asking you for personal information, unless you know who it is, someone who you've talked to before at the Social Security office, hang up. It's a scam. Okay? Now, if we call you from the Social Security office because you have a pending claim, we will identify ourselves, what office we're from, what position we have. You can always hang up and call the 800 number and say, hey, so-and-so called me. They say they're from this office and this is their position and this is why they need this information. Is this correct? And they can verify that for you, okay? Because sometimes when we call a person, if they're anxious to file a claim and they want to do it, let's say by phone, we have to identify that person. We have to see if it really is that person. So we have to ask them, what's your date of birth and where, you know, your parents' names and things. So we can make sure we're talking to the right person. So if I got a call like that, I might get nervous. Even if I were asked to file a claim, I might get nervous and I could say, well, could I call you back? Then you can always call the 800 number and verify that person's identity, and then call them back at the office, and then continue filing your claim by phone.
Will Social Security Administration just arbitrarily call you out of the blue, or must you make first contact?
No, you have to make first contact. Once in a while, we may have the Office of Inspector General. Maybe they're investigating something. They might call you, but again, they need to identify themselves, why they need, and then you need to go back to the 800 number and say, hey, this person is calling. If they are doing that kind of a call, that's going to be, we're going to have it in the system, okay? But we're just not going to be calling folks out of the blue and say, this is Social Security. We're doing an update. Could you give us your name and your Social Security number, your date of birth? We just want to make sure that's correct. Or they say, well, you've been linked to a murder somewhere. Somebody used your Social Security number, and we need to straighten this out. And folks get really nervous about
scared,
that.
Yeah.
But please don't give that information out unless you verify with the Social Security office.
So regardless whether you made the contact or it's a scam and you don't know it, your best bet is to find out all of the information you can about the caller, hang up, call the 800 number, verify.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I always tell folks, even when I call, hey, listen, this is my information. This is the office I work out of. You can go on the website, socialsecurity.gov, type in my name, Andy Hardwick. You'll see public affairs specialist. You'll see my phone number, my contact information there. So I have no problem with that. I just tell them, just make sure that don't Google Andy Hardwick, because you're going to find an Andy Hardwick who was arrested for harassing Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is one of my favorite singers, but she and I are way different in age, so I am not that Andy Hardwick. Apparently, this was somebody that was more or less her age and was doing that. So I tell her, that is not me. So anyway.
I wish I'd have heard that story before. I would have taken a little picture of Taylor Swift and put it on this website here.
That's all I need.
Okay, so Andy Hardwick with the Social Security office. Once again, if you've got a question you'd like to ask, you can call 936-336-5793 or 1-800-356-5793. Another thing that we were talking about earlier is Medicare. Are there any deadlines coming up that we need to be aware of? Something we need to do as Medicare recipients?
Okay. Well, folks that are about to be 65 get very nervous because there's a lot of misinformation about Medicare and when to file. Okay, if you are working and have health insurance through your employer, or you have a spouse who's working and you're on their employer health plan and you're about to be 65, you do not have to apply for Medicare A or B. You don't have to apply for either one. You can leave it alone. Then you have what's known as the special enrollment period. That means that once you stop working, if you're the person that has the health insurance through your employer, or your spouse, if you have the health insurance through your spouse's employer, once they stop working, you have 8 months to file for Medicare. And that's called the special enrollment period, okay? Special enrollment period. That's for people who are about to turn 65 but are still working or have a spouse who's working, and you are on either the spouse's employer health plan or you have a health plan through your employer because you're still working. So that's called the special enrollment period. However, if you're about to be 65 and you are not working and you are not under a spouse's employer health plan, then you need to file for Medicare during the initial enrollment period. The initial enrollment period is the month you turn 65, 1, 2, or 3 months before, or 1, 2, or 3 months after you turn 65. So if I'm about to turn 65 in a couple of months and I am not working and I am not under a spouse's employer health plan, I need to file for Medicare during the initial enrollment period, which is the month I turn 65, or 1, 2, or 3 months before I turn 65, or 1, 2, or 3 months after I turn 65. If I miss that, then I can only apply for Medicare during the general enrollment period.
So you've got kind of like a 6-month window there.
Yeah.
You've got 3 months leading up to your 65th birthday, the month you turn 65, and 3 months post 65th birthday.
It's actually 7 months.
7 months, right? Okay. So you have a 7-month window for you to go ahead and apply.
Right. Now,
Okay.
you missed that, okay? And you weren't entitled to a special enrollment period because you were working at 65 or your spouse had you on their plan, then you can only enroll during the general enrollment period, which every year is January 1st to March 31st of every year. So, of course, we're already in April. So anybody who missed that initial enrollment period or their special enrollment period was up and, well, now the general enrollment period is gone, they're going to have to wait till 2021, and then they'll have until March 31st of 2021 to file. Now, for those people who are late filers, who were not covered under that special enrollment period or missed their initial enrollment period, when they filed during the general enrollment period, for every year they were late in filing for Medicare, their Medicare Part B premium is going to be 10% higher. So if they're 5 years late, it's going to be 50% higher, 10 years, 100% higher, and that will never go away. Now, if I come to Social Security at 70, normally I would be assessed a penalty of 50% because I missed the initial enrollment period, okay? I'm 5 years past my 65th birthday, but if I say to Social Security, wait a minute, I was working and it's been less than 8 months that I stopped working, or I was covered under a spouse's employer plan and it's been less than 8 months that she stopped working. I'm within that special enrollment period 8-month window, so I do not get a penalty. So my Medicare Part B premiums are the regular cost. That I don't get a penalty because I'm filing 5 years past my 65th birthday. But that's the only way. If I was covered through an employer plan because I was working or my spouse was working, and it hasn't been more than 8 months that she or I have stopped working, then I'm good, no matter what my age is, okay?
Okay, gotcha. I think. That gets a little complicated.
It's a little bit complicated. So what I suggest is you can go to socialsecurity.gov, and there on the home page, there's a box, there's a square that says filing for Medicare, and that explains it. It's always better, Tiffany. It's always better if you can read this stuff, because I know when I listen to people explain it, and they say, you understand? And I say, yeah, and then maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, I've forgotten some details, and I said, did they say this or did they say that? So it's always better to follow up with reading about it and seeing. So you can go to our website. You can also go to Medicare.gov, but you're going to file the claim for Medicare A and B. A is the hospital benefit. B is the doctor benefit. You're going to file for those with us, with Social Security. Now, neither of those, A or B, A is free. If you have 10 years of work under Social Security, or you have a spouse who worked 10 years, you can file under them, even if they're not retired yet. And Part A will be free. That covers the first 60 days in the hospital after you pay deductible, okay? But that does not cover the doctor benefits. Part B is the one that covers the doctor benefits. And that's the one that costs you every month. That you have to if you're getting checks, then that'll be taken automatically from your Social Security checks. Otherwise, you'll be billed quarterly. Now they don't cover drugs unless you're in the hospital. If you're in the hospital, then your medications will be covered while you're in the hospital. But if you want a prescription drug plan, if you're signed up for A and B, then you sign up for Part D. Part D, as in David, you don't come to us because those are administered through private plans. So you can either talk with the plan, with the Medicare prescription drug plan, or you can call 1-800-MEDICARE, and that's a 24/7 service, okay? But I recommend that you call them during the evening. Don't call during the day. The lines are very busy. But during the evening, they're free, and weekends also, they're free. So anytime. And they will give you advice. They can give you a comparison about the 3 cheapest plans in your area in the zip code where you live, because the plans cover certain medications. So depending on what you're taking, you want to sign up for the plans that cover most or all of the medications that you take. So that's Part D. Now, that isn't free. That's generally the premium for that is about $30-something a month. So A covers the hospital, B covers the doctor. Those you come to Social Security to file. You could do that online, by phone, or in person, which at the present time you can't do.
You can't do that, right?
Right, by phone or online, all right? Part D, you file for that. You can do that online. You can go to Medicare.gov, hit Drug Plan Finder, and then sign up that way. Or you can sign up with one of those plans, one of the Part D plans, okay? Now, some people say, is there something, can I sign up for a plan that would have like A, B, and D all together, or where it might be a money saver? Those are the Medicare Part C plans, C as in
Cat.
Charles. C as in Charles or whatever. And they, now, there's a Medicare Advantage plan, okay? What used to be called like an HMO type plan. So they include hospitalization, the doctor visit, and also the prescription drug plan. So if you have a Medicare Part C, generally you don't need a Medicare Part D plan because this Part D is included in the Part C plan. So, the Part C, you pay a small fee when you go see your doctor, and then the rest is covered by your Part C plan. The thing with the Part C plan is that you have to make sure you have to use the doctors in network. So a lot of people like that, some don't, because they say, well, my favorite doctor or my specialist is not included in that plan. So you kind of have to decide for yourself, do I want to have choice and stay with traditional Medicare, or do I want to save myself a lot of money and go on one of these Medicare Advantage plans? Now, if you go on a Medicare Advantage plan and you don't like it, there are times during the year when you can switch from one Advantage plan to another. Or you can also go back during the open enrollment when it's October 15th to December 7th. You can go back to traditional Medicare, and then what's going to happen is the following year you will go back to regular Medicare. But if you drop Part C, the Medicare Advantage plan, and you go back to traditional Medicare, remember, that'll give you A and B, but then you're going to have to pick a Part C plan again because that doesn't come automatically with traditional Medicare. So this is a lot to take in. So I tell people either go to socialsecurity.gov and click on Medicare, or go to the Medicare website, medicare.gov, and read up on it so it makes a little bit more sense.
In your experience, you may not be able to answer this question, but going with a C plan, a CAT plan, is that a cost savings?
Yes, it is.
Okay. But there are limitations in the sense that you may have to select doctors that are in network that may not be who you're familiar with.
That's right, and the hospitals too. So you may want to go, maybe you're diagnosed, God forbid, with cancer, and you want to go to MD Anderson. MD Anderson might not be in your plan. So if they're not in your plan is not going to pay for the treatment there, okay?
Okay.
You have to use their hospitals and their doctors. So, it works for some people don't like it. So again, it comes down to choice, and Medicare can help you navigate. They can give you comparisons of the plans, or you can go, if you want to, Medicare.gov. You can do it yourself on the internet at their website. You can compare. They have a plan finder comparison, so you can either compare Part D plans or Part C plans. So you can you can see which one is better for you. Now, some people ask about the Medicare supplementary plans, okay, which are like F and G and all the other letters of the alphabet. So those supplementary plans are for the folks that are on traditional Medicare. See, traditional Medicare, A and B, they have co-pays, but they also have deductibles. So generally, these Medicare supplementary plans, they fill in, they pay the deductible. So, but they are not cheap, and they're for the folks that have the traditional Medicare, and they're for the folks that want to have something to fill in the gaps that traditional Medicare doesn't cover. Because, for instance, Medicare Part B, after you pay the deductible, Medicare Part B covers 80% of the doctor visit. Well, somebody might say, well, what about the other 20%? That's your responsibility. But if you have a supplementary Medicare plan, they would cover that extra 20%. But in order to get a supplementary plan, it's going to be an extra cost to you every month.
Now, in the private insurance business, I've looked at those supplementary plans to cover the deductible. Those can be pretty pricey.
Yeah, they can. So it's not for if you're looking to save money, you're not going to go to Medicare. You're not going to go to one of those plans. You're going to try and look and see if you can find a Part C that meets your needs. Because if you have a Part C, you don't need a Medicare supplement. As a matter of fact, you can't have one. So you don't need one of those supplementary plans. And that covers that 20% that Part B doesn't cover with traditional Medicare. Okay? So a lot of those costs associated with traditional Medicare would be covered under the Part C. But again, the Part C, if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, then you got to remember that in most cases you have to stick with the doctors that are in that plan and the hospital that's in that plan.
Is there, in your experience, is there pretty good choices in those plans for doctors and hospitals?
There's a lot of choices, but again, it depends on where you live. Now, if you live out in the sticks, way out there, your plan choices may be limited. It depends. Now, if you move to another place, you need to find out, does your plan cover? Now, if it doesn't, even though you're out of your enrollment period, when you can change from one plan to another, if your plan doesn't cover you in the new place where you're going to live, you have an open enrollment. You can go in and sign up for a new plan, which will cover you. Also, if you have a Medicare Part D plan, because you have traditional Medicare A and B, maybe you looked into it and it covered the drugs that you take. But let's say during the year you develop a condition and that requires a drug which is not covered under that Part D plan. If your doctor writes a letter to that company saying you must have that drug and no substitutes, that plan has to cover that drug till the end of the year, when you can switch to another plan for the following year, which does cover that drug that you need to take. So you won't be left out in the lurch.
Okay. So there are extenuating circumstances. There are ways to work with those.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Got it.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. All right. So we've talked about office. Now, let me ask you a question. We were talking about Texas Governor Greg Abbott kind of opening things up a little at a time. Do the Social Security offices, are they're being open or closed? Is that the federal government or each state government?
We are federal government. We have nothing. The governors can do what they want with state institutions, but we are a federal institution.
So it comes to the point when the federal government says you can open your office.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I thought that might be the case because I know you're a federal office, but I wasn't sure how that was going to work there. So now we know that. All right. What do we need to cover for those folks that may have joined us late? We've talked about scams and COVID and office closings and Medicare and SSI deadlines. I tell you what, let's run over that one more time. The Social Security disability benefits for those that have minor children.
Right. If someone is getting SSI, the check that comes on the first of the month, okay, either for disability or age, whatever, and they have minor children in their home and they have not filed a tax return for 2018 or 2019, chances are if they're on SSI, They probably didn't because maybe their income was too low. So if that's the case, if they want to get that extra $500 for the minor children, for the minor kids, they have to contact IRS by Wednesday of this week. Well, I'm sorry, May 5th. By May 5th of this week. I'm sorry. May 5th is not this week. This is only April 27th.
May 5th is Tuesday.
I guess that would be next week.
That would be next week.
Yeah, okay. So they have a couple of days. They need to go on the IRS website, irs.gov, G-O-V, and they need to put in the information about their minor children in order to get that extra $500 for each minor child they have living in the household. This is only for those who are on SSI who did not file a tax return for 2018 or 2019. Okay? Now, the deadline for the folks on Social Security with minor kids was last week. That was last Wednesday. But this is for the folks on SSI. The Social Security check usually comes on a Wednesday, second, third, or fourth Wednesday of the month, or comes on the 3rd of the month. But the SSI check comes on the 1st of the month. So the Social Security folks, their deadline came and went. But the SSI folks have until May 5th to contact IRS if they didn't file a tax return for 2018 or 2019 and they have minor kids in the household and they want that extra $500 per minor child. The rest of the $1,200 is going to come. But if they want that extra $500, if they didn't file a tax return this year for 2019 or last year for 2018, they need to go on that IRS website.
And to make your life just a little easier, you can go to kshn.com, and there's a IRS link that will take you directly to the page that he's talking about. So that will help. Andy Hardwick, as always, it is a pleasure to have you on.
Same here.
And we'll look forward to next month. Maybe we'll let Bill do it next month. Maybe we'll just take it away from him forever.
All right.
So thank you to Andy Hardwick for being on the show with us, helping us work through some of these Social Security, Medicare information kinds of things. You know what? Debbie forgot to bring me my list on who's tomorrow. Debbie always brings me my list, and Debbie didn't bring me my list. Oh, tomorrow's Liberty ISD. That's who's on tomorrow. Wednesday's Dayton ISD. It's like all schools all the time. 10 minutes after the hour of 9 o'clock. Say goodnight, Gracie.